One, two, three, four. It was the kind of night that happens once in a lifetime.
The highs and lows in the career and life of country singer-songwriter Larry Gatlin in this edition of It's Great to Be Alive. This continuing series is brought to you by River Park, a nonprofit foundation dedicated to expanding understanding of chemical dependency. Now, from Las Vegas, our host for It's Great to Be Alive, Glenn Jorgensen, with Larry Gatlin.
One of the things that I feel I've noted in your work, of course, is that much of it tells a story of experiences of your own or of life's experiences. And I'm wondering if you have done something specifically in the way of music relating to the subject that we're going to be talking about, is the occurrence of your own addiction and recovery therefrom.
Subsequent to December 9th, 1984, when I checked myself into a hospital to get help for my addiction, I have written songs that pertain to it in one manner or another. But my basic job as a songwriter is to look at all of life and to try to do that. I have not gone on a crusade, and written a concept album about drug-related stuff. The one that really comes to mind is Runaway Go Home, which wasn't directly about drug abuse, but about runaway kids and all that involves. The other one is the Midnight Choir, which I wrote. I tell people when we do it in the show, I say, this is a song about drunks. I wrote it about drunks before I realized there was one.
Will they have Morgan David in heaven? Oh, yeah. Dear Lord, we'd all like to know.
I would appreciate it if we could talk a little about, of course, your personal experience for the purpose of using that to reach somebody out there.
Well, I have been very forthcoming about my own problems with drugs and alcohol. First of all, because it helps me. Second of all, because hopefully it will help somebody who's out there still doing research. I think for a long time in our country, people thought that drunks were just gutter bums. The subject of alcohol was only mentioned as it related to somebody in the gutter, some old wino, some old drunk, and only, I think recently, thank God for Betty Ford.
Very significant breakthrough.
That lady came out and said, hey, it's not just the gutter bums, it's people who live in the White House, and God bless her for it. And other things have happened. A young man named Len Bias, at the height of his career, freebased cocaine one time and it killed him. So it has kind of awakened our country to the fact that this disease does not know any barriers, whether socioeconomic, racial, or otherwise. So it's well known. A lot of people in the music industry, the entertainment industry, who've kind of come out and admitted their problems and tried to get past them. So I feel very easy about that. I don't have any problem with it. I'm a recovering alcoholic, drug addict, sober by the grace of God for almost 5 years, and if getting on television and saying that might help somebody realize they need help. Nobody has to die anymore in the gutter for lack of help. There are places that people can go, whether it's your $1,000 a day treatment center or some other place. There are places that folks can go for help in this country and all over the world.
Would you, in this effort to educate, would you tell me a little about how you progressed into the disease of chemical dependency?
It's very simple. I believe it, I believe it started the first night I got drunk when I was 16 years old. I loved the feeling, I was 16, I was with captain of the football team, and we decided to get Larry drunk, so I did. It continued in my college days as I experimented with other drugs, with marijuana, and I'd take speed to stay up for a test, ostensibly to stay up for a test. And things like that continued on as I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. I started hanging out with a bunch of singer, songwriter, musician, artists, wonderful, warm, genuine, fabulous drug addicts,
Mhm.
every darn one of them. You know, maybe 2 or 3 exceptions, but almost all of them. And we thought that that's what we were supposed to do 15, 17, almost 20 years ago. We were supposed to get high and write these wonderful songs, and the world would be the path to our door, and we would be the salvation, you know? And I still believe that the craftsmanship and that artistry as it you know, manifests itself in a song is a wonderful thing to behold. Certainly. And I still love that. But we were not the saviors. I mean, we had this young, we were all young and, you know, full of vinegar, and thought this is what we're supposed to do, is sit around and get loaded, get high, get drunk, something, sing these great songs, and that would be it. We thought it was okay. We thought it was recreational. I read an article in the New York Times on the front page as recently as 12 years ago that said, and I quote, "Cocaine is not physically addictive." That was only 12 years ago. So it made me feel good. My buddies were doing it. My heroes were doing it. See, peer pressure is not just something that's in the 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th grade. You know, I was 30, 25, and peer pressure was there. And these people who were stars and people that I emulated and loved and worshipped, they were doing it, and it's okay. It made sense to me. So I guess 12, 13, 14 years ago, I was visiting a friend of mine down the street at what was then the MGM Grand, is now Bally's. And for the first time, I put cocaine into my body. And I loved it. It felt good. And for somebody to say that it doesn't feel good, if somebody tells a kid, hey, drugs don't feel good, that's a lie. Drugs do feel good for a while. They absolutely do feel good. So that's what happened. It continued for the next, you know, I was 25, my body could assimilate it a little better, but as I got older and started using greater quantities of cocaine to take me up, and Valium and booze to take me down, or Percodan, or, you know, Quaaludes, or whatever else I could get my hands on. I mean, it's that vicious cycle that we've heard about millions of times. So that is really what happened to me. I was in Dallas, Texas, and an awful thing happened to me and these people I was with. We ran out of dope. It was an awful thing.
The supply was gone.
It was gone. We had given checks. We had been to the 24-hour teller. Everybody had spent all the money that they had on them and could write checks for, and we ran out of dope. And it was the first time for a 3-day weekend that I'd ever freebased, first and last time that I'd freebased cocaine. And it was the worst, it was the lowest moment of my life. I was crawling around on the floor in Dallas, picking up lint out of a carpet, trying to put it in a freebase pipe. That's how devastated I was, and it could have been a bowling ball, and I'd have tried to put it in there. I was totally out of my mind. I crawled into the restroom, looked in the mirror, and I saw a very hopeless, helpless, sick human being. It was me. And literally on my knees, because I had crawled in there, I said, God, if you don't help me, I'm going to die. And God did help me, and I'm alive. And through the help of some friends, Ron Carpenter and Rick Blackburn and my brothers, and a fellow named Darrell Royal, ex-coach at the University of Texas, a longtime friend of mine, we went to a hospital in Orange County, California, and I met some wonderful people, among them a fellow named Joe Persh, Dr. Joe Persh. They told me that drugs and alcohol were the tip of the iceberg, that Larry was the real problem, and that I had to start working on Larry. So I did that, and on a daily basis I've worked on Larry ever since. And I may get drunker than Cooter Jones tomorrow, but I'm sober today and have been for 5 years almost. So when I was drinking and drugging, I had problems with my wife. I had problems with my children. I had problems with money. I had problems with fans. I had problems with, you know, now that I'm sober and straight, I have problems with my wife. I have problems with my kids. I have problems with the fans. I have problems with money, just like everybody else. No different, no better, no worse. The difference is that instead of having an argument with my wife, or let's say a healthy misunderstanding, and going off somewhere and snorting a gram of cocaine and drinking a bottle of booze, I go off, examine the situation, 99 times out of 100 realize that I'm the one who was wrong in the first place, and I go humbly ask her to forgive me, and we kiss and make up. It's a lot better deal, you know. So I feel like the most blessed human being alive, that I am alive. The first song we do in our show, the first verse says, golly, what does it say? I am alive and well, living in the land of dreams. I must be living under a lucky star, it seems. I got back down to basics, found a lot of joy in the simple things, alive and well, and living in the land of dreams.
Alive and well, living in the land of dreams. I must be living under a lucky star, it seems. I got back down to basics, found a lot of joy in the simple things, alive and well, living in the land of dreams. Take it up, boys.
That's me in a nutshell,
Yeah.
right there. So,
Well,
life's good. Life is very good.
one of the things that it's difficult to take is or to understand, is to see beautiful, talented, capable people living lives of desperation and basically dying needless, horrible, avoidable deaths, and knowing that somehow some of us are blessed with an opportunity to live again, or to live a better life.
It's tough on me. That question is tough on me, and sometimes I want to, as a recovering person, I want to say, God, why is this? But see, that's part of my problem anyway, is when I question. And there was a Broadway musical or a Broadway play a long time called My Arms Are Too Short to Box with God. I think that's a wonderful attitude to take. I can't box with him anymore. And you know, ours is not to reason why, ours is but to do or die, into the valley of death rode the 600. As they are placed across my path, I will do what I can to help, because the tendency for a recovering drunk is to find another drunk under every rock. The reason that's so easy is because there is a drunk under every rock. A lot of them out there.
Yes.
A whole lot of them out there. God bless them. God help them.
Larry, some of the signs for the benefit of the guy that's still out there saying, sure, I do a little coke, but it isn't interfering, and there's nothing wrong with it, it's not addicting, and so on. What are some of the signs, either that that happened with you or you become aware of, that someone like that ought to be hopefully beginning to see? You said you were beginning to have troubles in your marriage. Could you elaborate a bit on what was happening? Obviously of a negative nature, that now, in looking back, and it's so much easier to see things when we
Sure.
look back.
Well, my physical health was going into the dumper. I mean, I was sick all the time. My nose was running all the time. I had sinus congestion all the time. I lived on nasal spray and antibiotics. You know, ran a low-grade infection probably for 5 years. Allergies were awful. I mean, that's just the physiological part of it. I looked like a dead man. I didn't eat, didn't sleep. When I did sleep, I'd sleep 2 or 3 days at a time. Those are the physiological things. I was the maddest human being you have ever known in your life. Had a chip on my shoulder that Robert Conrad couldn't knock off, you know, his little advertisement. It's amazing looking back on it that I couldn't see. And I think I did know it. But it's just that I didn't know that there were alternatives.
I thought
this is it. This is it. This is the way it's going to be. I remember walking into my dealer's house with $7,500 and said, I pushed it across the table. I said, give me all that will buy. I'll never be without it again. I can't stand it. The world inside my brain had become so confusing and had turned on me and had tricked me. You see, I was supposed to be a big star. Well, I was kind of a medium-sized star, and I couldn't handle that, because the rejection of the Midnight Choir, really, funny enough, we talked about a while ago, that song really started the slide, because we'd had the biggest record in the world, a thing called All the Gold in California. It was a huge record.
All the gold in California is in a bank in the middle of Beverly Hills. It's somebody else's name. So if you're dreaming about California,
The next record we released was the Midnight Choir, and people started throwing rocks at me, started hollering and screaming at me, and boy, I bowed my neck. We circled the wagons and said, "We'll show you," and that's a good philosophy if you're really in a wagon. It's not a real good philosophy if you're in show business and trying to be a real human being. So it just went from bad to worse.
What about the emotional merry-go-round, or
oh Lord,
the paranoia? Some of those.
It's terrible. I'd pull the curtains together and put a chair up against it to make sure that no light got in, that nobody could see what I was doing. Lock the doors, bolted the doors, put chairs up against them. Tried to keep people from, I mean, everybody knew it, but I was afraid. I didn't know who they were, but they were out there trying to get me. And the deal with my wife and my kids was awful. I really mistreated one of the incredible human beings on earth, my wife, Janice.
Well, that's an experience. That's an important aspect to talk about. I've learned through my own experiences that we really need to address the whole family situation.
Yeah.
And so
it's a family disease.
Your family, did they know what was happening?
Well, Janice knew something. I got so mad at her one day. I was over looking under her little cabinet, her nightstand. There was a bunch. That's where she keeps the magazines. And I was looking for a People magazine or something, an article I wanted to read, and I happened to run across a book. The title of the book was "How to Handle Your Husband's Midlife Crisis." She knew something was wrong, and she was searching every way that she could to find out what was wrong with the guy she married. And I got so mad. I mean, I never laid hands on her in anger, but boy, it just, that fired me up. I said, I don't want to hear any crapola about this midlife crisis. I'm okay. You're the one that screwed up. So I mean, like I say, it's well documented in so many instances because of the anger, the confusion. Dr. Joe told me that when I started using alcohol and other drugs, I hear people say drugs and alcohol, well, that's funny. Alcohol and other drugs, he said at that moment, my growth stopped. My maturation, my maturation process really stopped, because now instead of going through the problems that help to make us grow, we just avoid them and have another drink or another toot or whatever. So I understand that I was pretty much a child up here, and the way I figure it now, I've had to go back to school. I'm almost 5 years sober, so I'm really in the latter part of the 4th grade.
I know.
And that's okay.
During all this process, how did your you had your wife Janice, is that right? And two children at that time?
Kristen and Josh. Well, the kids were a little too young to understand all of it, and until the very latter stages, I never brought it home. I mean, obviously you bring home the traits and the psychoses and the neurosis and everything else, but physically I never did do the dope at home until the very end. But when you come home after 2 weeks on the road and you sleep for the first 3 days and only get up to eat dinner and go back to bed, they knew something was weird, but that's all they ever knew. Because from the time the kids were born, that's basically what the deal was about. So it was horrifying.
Janice get to reach out? Did she have any help in this period of time then? Or
well, she prayed, and she knew there was, like I say, something wrong with the man she married. And she had a lot of faith, and she talked to different people. And I think she knew, and it was, as she will tell you, it was the most wonderful day in her life when I came and said, honey, I got to go get some help. In fact, she told me to go get help. She said, there's something wrong with you. I said, no, y'all ain't sending me to no damn care unit. Y'all ain't going to tack me up. Y'all just take care of yourselves, and I'll take care of me.
But it's important for people around the user to realize that they can be a part of, even though they don't seem to have much success, but there is more they can do now through what we call intervention.
Yeah, there are. I've been a part of 2 of them. They're not too much fun, but
it can
there's things that you have to do.
It can save lives.
It's better than the other alternative. I'd rather be at an intervention than a funeral.
So then you were fortunate enough to get into a good program of recovery and get a chance to take a look, and that's about 5 years ago.
I think it was Thoreau who said, the unexamined life is not worth the living. And on a daily basis, I examine mine. A lot of those days, I give myself a check mark. I did real well. Some of those days, I have to say, hey, I didn't do real well today. So I'm not perfect at it. I'm still a very volatile human being. I mean, I still have ups and downs.
Still have living problems.
Sure, like everybody else, but they are infinitely easier to assimilate into my daily life, and they don't, like I say, they don't cause me to drink or drug, and I'm not the angry young man I was. On occasion, I will get up in the middle of somebody's chili, right in the middle of their face, but it isn't as often anymore, and not even nearly as often. And usually after I jump in somebody's face, I go back and pat them on the backside and say, hey, let's go on. So Larry is not perfect. This is a journey. You know, this is not a place. Life is not a place. I wrote another song, and the first line says, life ain't a destination. Life is a highway. And so that's basically what I'm on. I'm 5 years into it. I'm better than I was, without question. And I can only wait till tomorrow to see how wonderful I just might become. Who knows?
Well, in the meantime, you're also, and if we could just take a couple of minutes to talk about your efforts towards part of your helping others, but your work with youth. I know that you've given very generously of your energies and time to work with some youth groups. Hopefully you're beginning to have a little better understanding of what it is that we can do to help them through these times, or help them avoid some of the difficulties we've experienced. What do you see happening with youth, and what do you feel that we can do to help them avoid this?
Well, I'm going to be a little pessimistic and a little optimistic. In the years between 12 and 20, boys and girls are going to do things. They are trying their wings. Just as my dad drank White Lightning when he was 14, you know, because it was there. That is the nature of the beast. That is the nature of life. You know, they're starting to feel, you know, that they're getting out of the nest. That's when those things start happening, at puberty, and at, you know, when young ladies start developing and guys have to start shaving and their voice gets lower. That's part of the animal. That is part of the human being. But now, it's just that some of the things that we try to experience can kill us a lot quicker. That is what our world has come to.
We know, Larry, that this disease does follow families, and I've read where you weren't the only one in a family that experienced some difficulties. I believe one or more of your brothers had similar problems. Could we talk just a few minutes about that?
I don't think Brother Rudy would mind. He's also on a little program of recovery, and realized that he had a problem. And I tell people, kind of funny, I dropped more dope than Steve ever did, you know. But he stopped drinking. Everybody in the band stopped drinking, some in a little program, you know, of recovery. And our lives are infinitely better. We were pretty much at each other's throats for the better part of 5 or 6 years, because that tension is just, you know, I mean, where there's booze and other drugs, there's tension.
Yeah.
You know, underlying all of that laughter in any beer joint I've ever been in was tension. And when the laughter stops, somebody gets their rear kicked. It's that simple.
Right.
You know, what are bars famous for? Fighting and carousing. I mean, that's just part of the deal. So it was that way with us. And now underneath the underlying thing in our group is love and a sense of well-being and trying to help. And yeah, we get mad at each other every now and then. It's not perfect, because we're still human beings and not saints. But it's a lot better infinitely better than it was. And,
so he's in recovery too now.
Yes, he is.
Support.
Yes, he is.
And it hasn't hampered your career and your business at all?
Well, no, I think without question, our career was done, maybe not irreparable damage, but we were on our way like this, and for the next 5 years, when we should have been going right through the roof, we did a tailspin you cannot believe. And it finally bottomed out, and hopefully we're on our way back up. We have all the work we can do, a new record company behind us that we're trying to get kicked off the ground. I'm writing a Broadway musical, and we're doing a movie based on another song of mine. And, you know, there's a lot of good things happening. But it is a very difficult task to bring a career back to full steam after it's been down. It's It's almost against human nature. It is a tough, tough thing to do. It's frustrating and it's tiring, but I got a lot of faith.
Well, we can be a part of trying to establish a society where people have increased faith in others and God, and what I've seen more and more, the basic need is a higher degree of self-acceptance and growing in liking me and living with me so that I can handle the stress of life without needing the other chemicals to do that.
A mechanic in Oakland with 4 kids to feed and a job that pays him $286 a week, that's pressure. Yeah. And all of them aren't drunk. My daddy, you know, worked every day of his life to feed me and my 2 brothers, my sister and my mom, and never saw him drunk. So that's pressure. To sit there and say, oh, Scarlett, it was the pressure of the business, that's hogwash. And I'm not going to hide behind that. Nobody held me down and made me do it. Now, it probably added to it once I got started. Yeah, there is a lot of pressure out here. I have a big overhead, this and that, and the travel and all that. But to blame my drug addiction on the pressure of this business is a cop-out, and I refuse to do that. There are people in pressure-packed positions all over this country and all over this world who have, you know, do not go home and drink or drug themselves into oblivion every night just because of the pressure. And to lay it off on that is a cheap shot, and I refuse to do it. I stand on my hind feet. I did it. Nobody made me do it. I'm responsible, not guilty. I'm responsible for it. And I'm also responsible for my recovery. I take full responsibility for it. It's up to me to do it.
We know that just from your experience that life doesn't have to be the constant state of psychic pain that we lived in, and that by getting help that we can truly find that it is great to be alive.
Not a bad deal.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If you or someone you care about needs help, it's available through private and public organizations. Check your telephone directory, but do get help. It's Great to Be Alive, a River Park production brought to you by River Park Foundation.
Living in a land of dreams, living in a land